Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So where are we starting out today?
Our when is 1985. Our where has the peony as their state flower.
What's my second?
Another hint is their state motto is Crossroads of America.
What?
Another hint, today's case is a shout out to one of our fans named Jody Johnston.
Indiana.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. So Jody left us a comment.
Crossroads of America.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who's gone to Indiana.
Me neither, actually.
I've literally driven across the country twice and have not gone through Indiana.
Me neither.
Maybe I'm avoiding it. Maybe it's because I think I know which fan you're talking about. Our Gary, Indiana warnings. Maybe I already sensed it was not a good place.
So that's what I was just about to say is Jody had left us a comment on one of our other episodes about how Gary, Indiana needed to be added to our list of places we did not want to visit. So me being me, I decided to go and check it out online, that is.
I was going to say, that sounds like the opposite of what she was suggesting, was to avoid it, so you then harnessed your rebelliousness and went
Online.
What'd you find out?
So Gary, Indiana at one point was a booming steel town.
What year?
In like the 50s and 60s. It's also the home of the Jackson 5. In its prime in the 60s, within the city limits of Gary, Indiana, there were close to 200,000 people in the city.
That's a pretty big city. In the 50s and 60s?
In the 60s, yeah. However, after restructuring the steel production and other heavy industries,
things going overseas,
in the late 60s, early 70s, when they restructured all that, Gary, Indiana started its downward spiral from a mid-century boomtown, and the manufacturing jobs that were once there were disappearing. So poverty was rising, the crime rate started rising, and Gary has earned the reputation for being a dangerous city with violent crime rates 318% higher than the national average. By the early 90s, the city that was once nicknamed the Magic City was renamed Murder Capital.
What's the population now?
And by 2024, Gary, Indiana only has roughly 67,000 people still living within its city limits. So from 200,000 to 67,000, that is a huge drop.
Well, when you take the jobs, people go with them.
Yeah.
But so if our story is in the 80s, what was the population then? Because I imagine it was higher than 67, but before it was, or like on the cusp of it becoming Murder City.
There was about 61,000.
What?
So this right here says in 1980, the population of Gary, Indiana was 61,000.
And now it's 67. So jobs are coming back.
Or people are just populating more. Anyway, most families were fleeing to the suburbs. And like many families unable to move away from the city, the Cooper family I'm about to tell you about were left in the wake of all of this change for the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just dive on in. On May 26, 2015, Paula Cooper sat alone in her car.
Did you say 2015?
Get a pen and paper. You need to stay connected here.
But did you say 2015?
Sure did. Just
all right.
Bear with me.
You know, you said we were in 85.
Bear with me.
Rawr.
Please don't ever do that again. So on May 26, 2015, Paula Cooper sat alone in her car with darkness surrounding her. She sobbed for forgiveness into a digital recorder, apologies and confessions of love and admiration to each of her friends and family. As the sun began to shine over the horizon, Paula ended the recording saying, "Forgive me, I must go now."
How old is she?
Exiting the car, the breeze in her hair and
So the windows down?
What?
I thought she was just in her car.
This is not a good start. You got to pay attention. I said.
Well, you're not answering any of my questions. I'm trying to picture Paula, and you don't even give me any information about her. I can picture Gary, Indiana.
Pretend that you are on Love is Blind. You don't get to know what she looks like, okay? And I said, exiting the car, the breeze in her hair, she walked to a garden spot in the woods where her father used to grow his vegetables and beat Paula and her sister.
Weird spot to go, but all right.
When Paula was younger, she and her sister Rhonda would cling to each other in the darkness, often drifting off to sleep listening to the violent arguments between their mother and father. There would be the lucky nights when Paula's father would pass out and the household could sleep. Other nights, after sufficiently beating his wife, the abusive man would barge into the girls' room and redirect his abusive fists at his daughters. Paula was born into a tumultuous family on August 25th, 1969, in Chicago. Her mother is Gloria Cooper. Gloria worked as a lab technician at the local hospital and suffered from a slew of health issues, mostly self-inflicted. Most likely to help her cope with the abuse that awaited her at home, Gloria would regularly mix alcohol with drugs. With substance abuse and a miserable home life, Gloria would have severe mood swings. She also struggled with suicidal thoughts, usually when she was not sober. Paula's abusive father's name is Herman Cooper. Herman, however, was not the father of Rhonda.
What about her sister?
Herman is Paula's father, but Rhonda, he's not her dad, but it's a family secret. But it wasn't a crazy secret like cheating or anything like that. Gloria was once engaged to a man named Ronald Williams. Ronald broke off the engagement because he felt that Gloria was mentally unstable.
Sounds like she is.
Oh, you'll see. In Ronald's non-medical opinion, Gloria suffered from split personalities.
Maybe she does. One's the drinker, one's the druggie.
But after they called off their engagement, Gloria found out she was pregnant. Gloria then meets Herman and they decide to get married, and he raises little baby Rhonda as his own daughter. But Rhonda's biological father, Ronald, doesn't just walk out on his daughter. He would still come visit Rhonda, but she only knew him as Uncle Ron.
That's weird as hell.
But if he's trying to give the little girl the most stable environment possible, he'll be Uncle Ron. Herman, he thought was a nice guy. He can be father, whatever. It worked for them. If it hadn't been made abundantly clear, Herman beat everyone in the house. The Cooper family quality time was spent being beaten as a family. Herman would beat Gloria and the girls. Sometimes he made Gloria watch as he beat the girls. Sometimes the girls were forced to watch as Herman beat Gloria. Sometimes he would beat everyone individually. He just beat everybody. And sometimes Gloria, don't think of her as like protecting her kids, because she would egg him on while he beat the girls. Herman didn't just use his hands to smack around his family. He used pretty much anything he could get his hands on. Shoes, belts, sticks, brooms, but his favorite was electrical cords. He would triple them up so they were extra thick and whip them with the cords. Sometimes for the humiliation and extra pain, Herman would force each of the women to get naked before he beat them. Herman was frequently unemployed. When he did work, he worked for the U.S. Steel or dabbled in the construction industry, but with the jobs disappearing, he was often out of work. Herman thought the grass was greener on the other side and would regularly leave his family for long stretches to go stay with his girlfriend. When he would eventually return home to his wife and daughters, he would bring his fists swinging. Paula's sister Rhonda was 3 years older than Paula, and by the time Paula was 5, the family of 4 had moved to Gary, Indiana. The girls attended church regularly and children's Bible study classes. When their father Herman would be off from one of his abandonment stretches, if their mother Gloria had to work a late shift at the hospital, the girls had to fend for themselves. Keep in mind, they're 5 and 8. But thankfully, they had some decent neighbors that would welcome the girls into their homes for meals. Once again, in 1978, Herman was out of the house. Gloria decided to change the locks on the home. Herman tried to come back into the house, and when he realized the locks had been changed, he broke in. He beat the shit out of Gloria, then forced his 9-year-old daughter and his 12-year-old stepdaughter to watch as he raped their mother, Gloria. One night, Gloria had reached rock bottom. She called Rhonda's father, Ronald, and confessed her suicidal thoughts to him after doing a lot of drinking and popping a lot of pills. And since Ronald was used to Gloria's levels of craziness, he could usually help back her away from the edge of the cliff. He would simply remind her, what about the girls? What would happen to Rhonda and Paula? And Gloria was like, you know what? You're right. And the two hung up the phone. Gloria sat and pondered Ronald's very question. What would happen to Paula and Rhonda? Herman was never around, and when he was, you just pray for him to leave again. Gloria picked up the phone and called Ronald back. Through her sobs, she told him he was right about the girls, and she figured out what she was going to do with the kids. Ronald demanded to know what Gloria meant, and he was shook with her response. I'm going to take them with me.
That's because he didn't mean have a plan for your suicide. He meant to give her life purpose, that he take care of her children. And instead, she called back and I figured it out. I figured out where the children are going to go. Now I can do it. And he was like, whoa, whoa, that was not what I was suggesting, a better plan.
Right. And that's exactly what she said is, I'm going to take them with me. I'm going to let you speak to your daughter and Paula for the last time. She handed the phone over to the girls, who were wailing, saying their goodbyes. They cried as they told Ronald that they were going to heaven with their mom. Ronald was in a panic and begged the girls not to do anything drastic, but the line went dead. To add to Ronald's panic, Gloria and the girls had just moved, and he did not have their new address yet. So he called the operator and he asked if they could trace the origins of that last call, but there was no luck. He then called Gary, Indiana police, but without the address, there was nothing the police could do. 3 weeks went by, leaving Ronald wondering what happened to Gloria and the girls. That's awful, by the way. It's really screwed up.
Well, what I don't get is you would think that if his daughter is moving and he's wanting to be a part of her life, you would think before they left that you'd be like, where are you headed to?
So I got the impression that because Herman is constantly unemployed and the house prices had come down because the area is declining so much, that they kind of just bounced around because they kept in contact on the phone. It's not like he came for regular visits. It was more or less a phone conversation. And when he would come, he'd get whatever their newest address was. He just hadn't been there yet. But what actually happened is after they hung up the phone and putting absolute fear into poor Ronald, Gloria told the girls that they would wait until tomorrow to go to heaven. But Gloria didn't just plan on going to bed and then waking up and killing everybody. Gloria kept the girls up all night. Between speaking calmly to the girls about how the world was a fucked up place and the only way to achieve better was to welcome in death, if Paula or Rhonda started to doze off, Gloria would begin screaming at them like they were soldiers in boot camp. There were also times throughout that long night that Gloria would be blubbering about their travels to heaven together. The next day rolls in with the warm sun breaking through the cool spring morning air. Gloria loaded her exhausted daughters into the car in the garage. She turned the key and the engine roared to life. Gloria pulled the garage door closed and climbed into the car with her 12-year-old and 9-year-old daughters. As the fumes engulfed the garage, the already exhausted girls began to drift into an unnatural sleep. The next events can only be speculated on, but Rhonda remembers being groggy and feeling almost paralyzed. Paula looked asleep next to her on a bed, and their mother was leaning over them. How did they get there? Rhonda felt Gloria gently brush the hair off of her face as she whispered to her daughters that they'll be all right as she leaves the bedroom. Rhonda was laying there confused and paralyzed for an unknown amount of time before she was finally able to move. She saw a note from their mother taped to the bedroom door saying that she was going to finish what she set out to do. Fearing Gloria returned to the garage to die, Rhonda called her aunt, who told her to hurry and go get a neighbor. The neighbor drags Gloria's lifeless body out of the poison-filled garage onto the front yard. Rhonda stands there watching as her neighbor, Mr. Hollis, drops down next to her mother. She watched helplessly as Mr. Hollis repeatedly smashed his hands into Gloria's chest. Unwilling to give up, Mr. Hollis continued to perform CPR on the lifeless woman. A scene was definitely being created out on the grass. Another neighbor, a nurse, comes running out of her house to try to help. Mr. Hollis and the nurse take turns trying to get Gloria's heart beating once more and to force fresh air into Gloria's lungs. After what seemed like forever, more help arrives. Firefighters and paramedics get to work trying to save Gloria, all while 12-year-old little Rhonda stood there watching the events unfold. At some point during this commotion, 9-year-old Paula wakes up and comes out to the front yard, horrified to see her mom laying there dead, watching breath being forced into her lungs by all these strangers trying to make this woman come back to life. Paula becomes hysterical, and in that moment, paramedics get a weak but faint pulse. They take the win and whisk Gloria off to the hospital. Paula and Rhonda go stay with their aunt for a week while Gloria is in the hospital, but nobody ever checked on the girls to see how their health was because no one ever knew that Gloria had tried to kill her babies too.
Ooh.
After a week in the hospital, she signed herself out and went home. No one ever stopped her from picking up the girls or even questioned what the hell she was doing in the garage with the car running or her suicide note.
Well, it was what, the end of the 60s, into the 70s? Well, in the 70s, 80s.
70s.
Nobody talked about it.
Yeah, I don't understand why Gloria was allowed to keep the girls after a stunt like that, even if it wasn't the authorities that take the girls, where were, like, the aunt knew when Rhonda called the aunt and was like,
Yeah,
Mommy
but
tried.
just like Uncle Ron, that if you take her kids away, what is she supposed to be doing with her life?
Yeah,
Do you think that'll make her less suicidal?
true. Eventually, Ronald hears from everyone and is relieved to hear that the murder suicide plans were foiled. From that point on, every time Ronald spoke to Gloria, he begged for her to give him custody of Rhonda and Paula, and she always refused Ronald's request with not just a simple no, but this crazy broad would say, I'd rather see them both dead.
All right.
As Rhonda reached her teen years, she began running away. She would even try to save her sister Paula by bringing her with her. Rhonda was the protector, the mother figure that Paula didn't have, which seems crazy since the girls were only about 3 years apart, but Rhonda would make meals for Paula. She would get her ready for school. She made sure Paula did her homework in the afternoon. She made sure she bathed. Gloria, if you haven't figured it out, she's not much of a mother to her girls. And Herman, he needs to crawl into a ditch somewhere and die. He's just a piece of shit. Paula was known as a wuss in their neighborhood. She would frequently have to run home because the tough area that they lived in, Paula was easy pickings. More often than not, a group of girls that would be bullying Paula would chase the timid little girl home to Rhonda's arms, and Rhonda would go outside and open a can of whoop ass on those bullies. Part of what made these girls outcasts were they were not allowed to have friends. They could not go outside, and if they did, they had to stay up on the front porch. They couldn't have friends over. They couldn't go over to a friend's house. There's kids everywhere running up and down the sidewalks. They should have been able to go play, but they're unable to be kids themselves.
But it's a headed downhill city where there's a lot of murderings going on and a lot of crime going on. So I don't care if there are other children out in the street, that they don't need to partake in that either.
Well, I get that, and I don't think that was the reason that that their parents wouldn't let them go play with the other kids,
You don't know.
because it is the late 70s, and that is the time that kids were able. I mean, we look at how much we played up and down our street. That was in the 90s.
Yeah, well, so if they're in their teens and were born almost like right at the end of the 60s, 70s,
They're not teens yet. I mean,
you said they started running away within the teens.
I said when Rhonda hit 13. So Paula's a few years younger, so they're not both.
Right, but if we're assuming we're in the 80s, you said the 90s is when they're named Murder City. Well, I feel like you got to be in Murder City for a while before in the 90s you get the name tag or the label.
Yeah.
I vote that they don't need to be running around in the street unsupervised either.
I think it was part of the neglect and abuse that the parents were trying to hide, more so than giving a shit about the girl's safety. But a few months after Gloria's murder or suicide attempt, I don't know how, but by accident, Rhonda learns that Uncle Ron was actually her father, not heavy-handed Herman. Gloria and Herman continued with their on-again, off-again violent relationship, and it became more violent and more toxic each time they got back together. Finally, in 1982, both of the girls were briefly removed from Herman and Gloria's custody. The girls were sent to live at the Thelma Marshall Children's Home in Gary, Indiana. But eventually the girls were returned back to their parents, and again, the girls would run away. Through all of this chaos, Ronald was desperately trying to work with Child Protective Services to gain custody of not just Rhonda, but also of Paula, which tells me a lot about Ronald, because he was trying to help not just his kid, but this other little girl.
Well, he's been around the whole time.
Yeah. The girl's caseworker told Ronald, look, I don't need you causing any extra problems or hiccups in this case because I'm supposed to retire in 6 months. So just back off.
What does one thing have to do with the other?
I guess it was more paperwork versus if she just signed off and said that the kids were fine to stay where they were at. After running away over and over again, Gloria finally said, fuck this bitch. Just take her, but only her. Gloria did probably the only kind thing she would ever do for her daughter, Rhonda. She allowed Rhonda to go live with Ronald, but Paula was not allowed to go. She belonged to Herman.
Paula's all alone.
And that's it for Rhonda. She escapes the abusive house and finally had her Uncle Ron, her dad, who loved her and cared for her. But what about Paula?
But now Paula is going to take the beatings for two.
Without Rhonda to protect her, Paula was thrown to the wolves. No one to share in the beatings from Herman.
Literally. She's going to get beat by the locals and her Mom and Dad.
Yep. No one to defend her against Herman.
I'm surprised she makes it to 2015.
No one to defend her against the bullies chasing after her. There's nobody. 13-year-old Paula was all alone. She had two options: stay weak and probably die, or get tough.
Or run away.
Paula began skipping school and running away. At school, Paula was desperate to get away from her parents' constant abuse. She would show the administrators a bunch of the latest injuries from one of her many beatings. She had a bruise on her thigh, a welt on her arm, and rug burn across her elbow. A welfare caseworker visited the Cooper home. Herman and Gloria cussed out the caseworker. They blamed all of Paula's problems on interference from the courts, from the schools, and from the welfare department itself.
We'd stop beating her if you'd stop coming over to check on her.
Right? She's just spoiled. You guys are making her think she deserves better than this. When the caseworker recommended that the family go to counseling, Gloria said she'd rather go to jail, which I wish they would have more than obliged Gloria, but nothing changed for Paula. On one rare occasion, Rhonda came over to visit with Paula and her mother, but a fight broke out between Rhonda and Gloria because Gloria was bitter that her daughter chose to leave her. A distraught Rhonda called her father Ronald to please come get her. Ronald raced to the Cooper house to rescue his daughter. As he pulled up to the house, he could hear Paula wailing from inside. As he approached the house, Paula ran out the door, sobbing, and jumped into Ronald's arms. Gloria was chasing after Paula, screaming, "I'm going to kill you, bitch! And if I don't, Herman will!" Ronald puts both Rhonda and Paula into his car. He takes the threat of murder serious. Gloria is charging after Ronald's car, still screaming she would kill her daughter.
Why?
I don't know what that fight was over, but I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that Paula was having sex. I think Gloria found out that Paula was having sex. I think that's why she said that Herman was going to kill her too. I could be wrong. It could be over something completely different. I don't know what that fight was over at all. But staying at Ronald's isn't an option either. She's not his daughter. He has no legal rights to keep her. And Ronald didn't want to risk losing Rhonda by keeping a minor without her parental permission. And another hiccup for Ronald was that he moved to Illinois. So he would have had to take a minor against parental permission across state lines. And Gloria and Herman had already threatened to call the police on Ronald if he took her. But he also didn't want to send a young teen back to that violent house. Just know I'm about to choke on these next words. I sat there and just stared at the paper when I read it. So Ronald decided he'd rather Paula be in the streets as a slut than for her mother to blow her brains out. So he turned her loose on the streets in Gary, Indiana, to go be homeless and have sex for money.
Why wouldn't he, Western Union her some money and keep her somewhere safe?
That's why I said I literally choked on that, because I was like, what the fuck kind of sense does that make?
You're free. Go get strangled by John.
This girl is 13 years old. You're trying to protect her, so you turn her loose into a very high crime area to be alone and broke? What?
Maybe he was hoping that she would have an outcome like Pretty Woman.
I don't think he was that smart. So Paula would become homeless on the rough streets of Gary, Indiana, and that only would last for a few days before she ultimately returned to her parents' house. But again, she doesn't stay long. She becomes a habitual runaway. After being returned to her parents' house for the umpteenth time, Paula stayed in a catatonic state on one of the returns, and she was placed in a mental health center for observation. When asked if she ever thought of hurting herself, Paula replied honestly, yes. But still, after just 4 days in the hospital, Paula is once again released back to her parents' custody. Herman told the police Paula was just an out-of-control teen and asked the officers for their advice. And supposedly one of the officers told Herman, "You're her dad. Do what you think's right." So Herman loaded his now 14-year-old daughter into the car. He drove out to a patch of woods where he told Paula she can scream and no one will hear her. He proceeded to beat Paula for a half an hour. Paula thought that this was going to be the beating that would finally end her life, but no such escape for Paula. After Herman had exhausted himself from abusing his daughter, he shoved Paula back into the car and started the drive home. The streetlights were coming on as the darkness encroached in the world around her. Paula stared out the window, defeated once more. all while knowing that she wasn't strong enough to endure many more beatings like this. As her father parked the car in the driveway, this was her chance. Paula made her move. She jumped out of Herman's car and started running and screaming. The neighbors knew the Cooper house was abusive, but never actually witnessed things to this extent. The neighbors all started turning on their lights and gathering out on their porches to watch the spectacle that was playing out front. Paula was screaming for help running down the sidewalk, with Herman screaming at her to shut the fuck up and trying to chase after her. Herman, realizing he had quite the audience forming, retreated back into his own home. Paula runs and runs. She runs as fast as she can and as far as she could go. She was desperate for help. Somebody, anybody, just please help her. Paula ran until she found herself at the police station. She begged the police to protect her. From that point forward, Paula would bounce around for the next 2 years in foster care, homeless shelters, and even juvenile detention. She got put in juvenile detention for running away so much. And what is the one thing all these places had in common?
Criminals.
Okay, 2 things they have in common.
Neglected children.
Fine. Apparently, Claire can come up with lots of things they have in common. But the one thing they have in common for Paula is they always sent her back to her parents. Paula does end up making a few friends with some of the girls in the neighborhood. Paula is almost 15. It's 1984, and the summer before she starts 10th grade. Paula ran away yet again, but this time she met a man out on the streets.
Oh, no.
She thought she would finally be safe and loved. But unfortunately, this feller was just another piece of shit to come in and out of Paula's life. He was a drug dealer who abused Paula. Paula found out that she was pregnant. She was excited for this new little life growing in her belly. Someone to love, and more importantly, someone who would always love Paula. But when Gloria found out, she was not having any of that. She told Paula that she was going to abort the baby. So once again, Paula ran away, but this time it was an attempt to protect her unborn child. She makes it all the way up to Chicago before Gloria tracks down Paula. Because Paula is still a minor, she has no options, and she has a late-term abortion by force. That is what finally broke Paula. Now you have some serious history of this girl's unhappy home life, right? Like, you fully grasp just how fucked up her life is.
Mm-hmm.
Paula has now started 10th grade. She's now started drinking alcohol. She's smoking cigarettes. She smokes weed daily. She started getting kind of heavy, so she started to take speed to lose weight. She also dabbled in cocaine. She and 2 of her friends, also 10th graders, write these names down. You've got April Beverly, who's 15, just like Paula. There's Karen Corder. Karen is 16, and she's Paula's best friend. When I say best friend, understand that Paula, being bounced around and having behavioral issues, this is her 4th high school she's attended. She's only in 10th grade, and she's already been in 4 different high schools.
Right. So not many close friendships.
Right. So these are best friends by the standard of only a couple of weeks. And Karen's the oldest and a bit on the heavy side. She's also the mother of a 3-year-old little boy. So yeah, do that math. She's 16 with a 3-year-old. That means she was 12 or barely 13 when she was pregnant and then gave birth to her son in a toilet. 15-year-old April, she's currently hiding the fact that she's 7 months pregnant.
She must be a big girl.
They're really not. Well, I mean, I've only seen really pictures of their faces, but
How do you suck in 7 months? Some serious long-term bloating.
I think it's some serious baggy clothes.
It's just gas.
Anyway, April is living with one of her sisters. She comes from a family of 11 that's split up and living in all kinds of different places. And the house she's living in is one of her older sisters, and it's her sister's family, and then April and a couple of their siblings. But they're just that poor family's also divided.
This is a collection of gals that have it rough and not a caring background family.
Right.
Not a whole lot of options, not a whole lot of support, but spreading their legs because they want to be loved by anybody.
Pretty much.
And unfortunately, there are people out there who will take advantage of that.
Yep.
They can spot a girl with daddy issues from across the parking lot, even in the cover of dark.
All right.
Anyway.
As correct as you are.
April, Karen, is there another one?
During their lunch break, the 3 teens decide they're going to dip. Paula had a note from her mom allowing her to leave to go refill her birth control pills.
How is that an excused absence?
You know what? If she's already skipping school and she's having sex, If she wants to leave school to go make sure that she has her birth control, I feel like that
But is she
becomes
actually doing it, or is
yes.
she okay?
Yes, she does. Yes. And they left during their lunch break.
But why does she
And
need 2 escorts?
I don't know, because she can. And together, the three girls, they leave their high school. They head over to the arcade after filling the birth control pills.
Well, they just really want to play with any sort of balls.
Well, if also keep in mind they left during their lunch break, and that was the time where if you had an excuse note, you could leave the school property.
Mm-hmm.
But you're expected to return after lunch is over. But the girls instead decided to go to the arcade, and April allowed another girl that only she kind of knew, and the other girls don't know her. But April lets that girl come with. And her name is Denis Thomas. She's the baby of this group of misfits at just 14, and she's a freshman in the high school.
How many children does she have?
She has no real hardship to speak of. She was more or less just a tag along. This was her literally making an awful choice to hang out with the bad group of girls.
Hmm.
And I hate calling the girls bad girls, but let's face it, that's the track that they're on now.
Yeah.
And of these 4 girls, Paula was the ringleader. The 4 girls get to the arcade and quickly get bored. They have no money, which sucks so bad. They worked so hard for the money that they did have. The week before, they went and broke into the neighbor's house with a rock through a door window and made out with a whole $90. But they were hungry, so they spent their hard-earned cash on candy.
Makes sense.
And now they don't got no money for the arcade games. And there's no boys at the arcade.
Because they're in school.
This shit sucks. But we're not going back to school. So with the entire afternoon at their fingertips, the girls sat around and like, what shall we do?
They turned to prostitution.
What are we gonna do? So the girls walked the 3 blocks back to the house that April was staying at with her siblings, and the teens plop down on the front porch and share a bottle of wild Irish rose wine while deciding what adventures the day will hold for them. If they had more cash, they could go get them some snacks and go back to the arcade and wait for them boys to show up.
This is like a horrible Snickers commercial.
So these girls really should have stayed in school because together they struggled to put enough common sense together to form a coherent idea.
It was the wine.
The girls' first harebrained attempt to get some cash, all 4 girls, they walk up the street to some woman's door, and pregnant 15-year-old April introduced 14-year-old Denise as her daughter.
What?
Yeah. April then tried to convince this woman that woman's husband had taken $20 from little old child Denise and that they'd come to collect it. And for added oomph to the story, April threw in the minor detail that the woman's husband was naked when he stepped out in the street to take Denise's money.
None of that makes any sense.
It sure doesn't. And obviously this woman didn't buy the shit they were selling.
I would have been like, well, it sounds like you're asking $20 back from the wrong person.
Well, she tells the girls, go back to school, and closes the door. So the girls feel defeated and they go back to plopping down on April's porch. We need money. I guess we could rob my neighbor, 15-year-old soon-to-be mother April suggests. She's old. She's got jewelry. I'm pretty sure I saw that she had a jar of cash in her house. And she's a widow who lives all alone. It's perfect. But how are we going to get in her house? Because she's always home. How are we going to get in? And the girls learned from April that her neighbor Ruth Pelk was 78 years old and offered Bible study classes to anyone who wanted them. Ruth had lived at her house for 41 years. Even though Gary, Indiana was turning into a town of criminals and all the local businesses that had packed up shop and moved down towards the suburbs, Ruth loved her little white house with the little white pillars out front. And at least a few of her neighbors were still good people.
Not these ones.
Yeah, definitely not these. Ruth thought that with the help of God, love, patience, and understanding, that no one was lost. Anyone could be saved, especially a child.
So she didn't know all of her neighbors, huh?
Sure didn't. Ruth attended church on Wednesdays and twice on Sundays. She used to give the neighborhood kids candy when they memorized scripture, and she would drive them to church services if they were willing to go. This would be how they got invited into Ruth's house. But April was like, hold up, pump the brakes. There's one problem in this brilliant plan.
I'm Jewish.
I know, old lady Ruth. You can literally see Ruth's house from my front porch.
Well, that's what the whole it's my neighbor.
Right. If she sees me, she's gonna know me, April explains. Damn. I got it. I can be lookout. You guys can go rob her. Perfect. This plan is coming together nicely. April decided they needed a gun to help scare Ruth into giving up her jar of cash. April brings Paula inside the house because she thinks she knows where there's a gun. Dang. No luck. The gun's not there. Damn it. Resourceful April was like, I have a knife you could use to scare Ruth with. And she hands Paula a 12-inch butcher knife. You're not supposed to make me laugh. Paula tucked the knife into her windbreaker and followed April back out to the porch where Karen and Denise were waiting. The girls run through their master plan one last time. Knock on Ruth's door. If Ruth doesn't automatically invite them in, they would ask Ruth to write down the address for Bible study classes because Karen's aunt needs the address. And once inside, they would brandish the knife, take Ruth's valuables, leave with their loot, return to the arcade, and this time they'd have money. Brilliant. Nothing can go wrong. So Karen, Paula, and Denise walk across the street.
Hey, if you're gonna do this like an old-timey radio station, the least you could do is be like, and they walk across the street.
I didn't say they rode horses across the street.
Well, that was multiple feet, so since there are 4 girls, I use each of my fingers as their... It wouldn't make sense if it was just... They don't have peg legs.
So, anyway, Ruth informs the girls that she no longer offers Bible study classes, but she knows a nice woman who does. Ruth makes the naive mistake of inviting the 3 girls inside her home so she can write down the new address. As the girls follow Ruth into her tidy little home, Ruth walked across her living room over to her desk to retrieve the address for these lovely young ladies. Paula carefully sets her jacket on the couch, when suddenly Ruth feels Paula's arms wrap around her from behind. Ruth was old, yes, but she was still fit.
She's a black belt in karate.
She tended her garden and kept up with the maintenance on the inside and outside of her home. So the elderly woman and the husky teenager wrestled around a bit. Ruth was no chump to be taken down easily, but the scrappy old woman was no match for the chunky 15-year-old Paula, who managed to get Ruth into a headlock. As she choked the elderly woman down to her knees, Paula chucked Ruth onto the floor. 14-year-old Denise ran over and grabbed a triangular snow globe. She raised the globe above her head and brought it down full force, shattering it over Ruth's head. Paula quickly retrieves the knife out of her jacket on the couch and brandishes it, threatening Ruth. "Give me the money, bitch!" Ruth looked angrily back at the girls. "You aren't going to kill me." Ruth then began screaming for help as blood poured down Ruth's white hair and trickled into her face. Paula was enraged. This isn't how it was supposed to be. Why did she have to resist? It was just money. They would have just taken it and left, but Ruth had to go and make things more difficult. Paula's rage was out of control. Paula blacked out. All that rage that had been building up inside of her boiled over all at once, and nobody really knows what was going on in Paula's head at that moment, not even Paula. With the knife in her hand, she held it by the handle and began slashing at Ruth's face. She sliced through Ruth's cheek and even stabbed her in the head, but these were quick, shallow stabs. Ruth collapsed backwards onto the floor. Paula continued slicing, and Ruth kept trying to stop her. She slashed Ruth's arms and legs. Where were 16-year-old Karen and 14-year-old Denise?
Hiding.
No, they're right there. Standing there frozen, but they're right there. This was not the plan. Not the plan at all.
And they're suddenly not hungry.
Well, Karen started screaming at Paula to stop. Denise started crying and screaming for Paula to please stop. The only time Paula's slashing and stabbing assault stopped was for the brief moment when Denise cried out that she was leaving. Ruth had a momentary reprieve from Paula's assault when Paula glared up at Denise and growled, "Leave and you're dead."
Why did she announce she was leaving? Just get the fuck out.
Right? Paula was straddling the elderly woman, slicing open her belly. Ruth had been stabbed more than 30 times. None of the wounds were a fatal strike. Ruth was still alive and still conscious. Paula was becoming exhausted. In one last attempt to take Ruth's life, Paula stabbed the knife into Ruth's belly, deep into her gut, and then thrust the blade upward and into the side of Ruth's chest. Paula finally stopped, bloody and out of breath. Paula said, "I can't take no more." which I did roll my eyes at because you're not the one being injured. You're doing all the injuring. Paula told Denise, come hold the knife inside of Ruth. Whimpering, Denise shook her head no. Paula gestured for Karen to come hold it. Karen crossed the room, knelt down next to the dying old woman, and held the knife in place in Ruth's open chest. Now, April, remember her? She's 7 months knocked up, and this entire rob my neighbor, here, take this knife with you.
Mm-hmm.
She can hear screaming and shouting, and her friends haven't come back out yet, so April darts across the street to go check on her pals. She goes in through Ruth's front door to find a horrifically bloody scene. But she doesn't leave. Instead, she takes in the scene. Paula was head to toe covered in blood. Ruth was completely ripped apart. Karen was kneeling next to Ruth, wiggling the knife back and forth, playing in Ruth's wounds. Then, out of morbid curiosity, Karen shoved the knife deeper into Ruth to see how deep she could get it to go. And through all this, poor Ruth was still alive. Her arms and legs were still moving. She was moaning and flinching and wincing in pain. Karen exclaimed, "This bitch won't die!" Ruth was bleeding profusely, and if at any point one of these girls would have called an ambulance for Ruth, she most likely would have survived the brutal assault. But no one called for help. They just held the knife in Ruth's chest for close to 30 minutes, while Ruth was very slowly going into shock. Paula stormed off after Ruth told Paula, "If you kill me, you'll be sorry." Pissed that this old woman had the balls to still threaten Paula. What the hell? Just shut up and die already. Paula storms off with Denise to go ransack the house. Karen and April couldn't stand the sight of Ruth's mutilated face any longer, so one of the girls grabbed a towel from the bathroom with the intention of covering Ruth's face. However, first, the towel would be used to try to smother Ruth's final breaths with. As Ruth laid there, realizing that these little hoodlums are about to actually kill her, Ruth uttered one last partial sentence. "Our Father, which art in heaven." Meanwhile, Paula couldn't find anything to make the awfulness that just occurred worth it. She searched the upstairs bedrooms, tore apart the downstairs rooms. The only thing they found was $10 and a set of car keys. Paula ran outside with the car keys to try her luck with the old Plymouth, but nothing. Wrong set of keys. Now that Ruth has finally stopped fighting, April can help with the treasure hunt. The girls continue to search Ruth's home. April hands Paula another set of car keys she found. They run out to the garage. This time, the car roared to life. The girls cheered with excitement. Paula stays out in the car. April runs inside to get Denise and Karen. April found Karen kneeling next to Ruth's body, watching Ruth's chest rise and fall, with each breath becoming more shallow, until eventually Ruth's chest raised up once more before it sank back down and remained still. Ruth Pelt was dead. April, sensing the fear from Denise and Karen, she then threatened her friends, "If you tell anyone, I will kill you." April tells the girls, "Quick, get your asses in the car. Paula's there. Let's go." From start to finish, 1 hour had gone by. Before leaving the house, Karen reached into Ruth's chest and pried the knife out. It was stuck real good. She had to really yank it, and it was slippery. As the girls went out to the car, Karen tossed the knife into the back of the car onto the floorboards, still covered in Ruth's blood. Paula, even though she was too young to drive, backed the car out of Ruth's driveway, and the girls rolled down the windows and went for a joyride. And for those that don't know, did you know depending on where you live, joyriding is defined differently? Claire and Dave involved me in this debate. Claire and I grew up with joyriding being defined as just out driving around, right?
Aimlessly wandering about.
It reminded me of the oldie song, "Driving Around in My Automobile."
Oh.
No particular place to go. That's joyriding. For me and Claire, that was joyriding. Our innocent childhood.
Particularly for Andrea.
But Dave, Dave, on the other hand, but he is also the naughty boy. And
he didn't say he was joyriding. He said that it was stealing a car and riding around in it. For our childhood, it wasn't stealing nothing. It was just like you're aimlessly wandering, driving around, burning gas.
Well, after much debate, according to the internet, it means both. But for today's purposes, we're going to use Dave's definition, and Paula, Denise, April, and Karen went joyriding in Ruth's car. I'm pretty sure Dave has a smug look on his face at this particular moment in time.
Probably so. Super appreciate that. Need we remind him that he's a rat?
These brilliant gals drove right past their high school that was letting out of school for the day. They waved as their classmates looked at them confused as to where the heck did they get a car from. After lapping the neighborhood,
Or how about why are they all bloody?
I figure they washed up in the sink. But after lapping the neighborhood, Karen asked to be dropped off back at April's, and then she's going to walk home. She wasn't much in the mood for the arcade, which is what the girls still plan to do with their $10 they lifted off of Ruth. Paula tells her BFF, "Sure, I'll drop you off at April's, but can you do me a fave?"
Die first!
"No,
Oh.
I totally forgot my jacket in that old lady's house. Can you pop on over and grab it for me?"
No. Sure fucking am not.
So Paula drops off Karen. Next, Denise asks to be dropped off at a gas station. She said she'd make her way home from there. Paula obliged. Paula and April pull up in front of the arcade. They chat out in the car for a few minutes before Paula announced that she needed to take her a wee. She ran into the arcade, and when she returned from the bathroom, 5 girls from the school were standing at the car talking to April. The girls asked Paula where she got the car, and Paula said that it was her sister's. She then offered to give the girls a ride. All the girls piled into the car, and they went joyriding.
Again.
There it is again for you, Dave. One of the girls felt something hit her foot and kind of stick. It was weird. Felt heavy.
She done got stabbed.
She bent down, felt around, because, the car's jammed tight. There's 7 girls in this car right now. So she reaches down and she picks up the bloodied murder weapon. She now has blood on her hand and her shoes. Ew. And she jokingly asked the girls,
Could they murder?
"Did you guys kill somebody?" And they were like, "Ew, no." And then that was the end of the conversation. They continued driving around until eventually all the girls get dropped off at their houses. 2 more days trickled by, but Paula and April started falling apart at the seams. They couldn't agree on what they should do next. April found $40 in Ruth's glove box. She wanted to spend it. Paula wanted to save it for gas. April wanted to go hang out with her boyfriend. Paula wanted to figure out a plan.
They need to stop driving the car.
Yeah. The girls wrestled over the money. Not
Physically wrestled, but grappled with the things to do.
They didn't wrestle, like mentally toy with the different ideas. No, I mean they physically fought over the $40.
Like WWE style, somebody grabs a chair.
Like they tore one of the $20 bills. They were playing tug of war and pushing and shoving, and Paula was finally like, "Damn it," and just let go of the money and said, "Heck with it. April can keep it."
She needs it for her child.
No. Pregnant April and her boyfriend, they went and got them some alcohol with that $40.
Nothing says love like fetal alcohol syndrome.
Right? But Paula, she wasn't interested in drinking. She needed a plan. She has the car. She's got an opportunity to get away from her psychotic parents. She needs to do something.
She's already away from her psychotic parents.
Not forever. Eventually, they're going to run out of gas. And now that they just spent $40 on alcohol.
Why didn't she go stabby on them?
Well, Gloria contacted the police to report Paula missing. Gloria told police Paula had not been home in several days. Meanwhile, Ruth's stepson, Robert, and his wife could not get a hold of Ruth.
They find her.
She was very close with her stepson. 2 days after Ruth had been butchered, Robert drove out to Ruth's house. He noticed her car was gone. Whatever. I'll just wait here to see Ruth.
Then he sees her car drive by.
That would have been funny, but no. He's waiting outside and he's like, whatever. I guess I'll just go inside. So he grabs the hide-a-key and lets himself in. He's absolutely shocked to see the state the house is in. Ruth's home is typically neat and organized, and it looked like a tornado had hit. He walked into the living room. There on the floor, a woman laid still in the dark. She was covered in dried blood, and a towel was draped over her face. Robert slowly knelt down. He pulled the towel from Ruth's face, and his voice trembled as he called out her name. He touched her arm. Cold. Ruth was dead. Robert went to the phone to call 911, but the phone was ripped from the wall. For you youngsters listening, this is post-dinosaur era, but pre-cell phone era. We call these days the days of landlines.
The days of our lives.
My daughter, who is 11, was like, "What's a landline?"
One that's attached to the land by a line.
That's almost how I said it. And then she's like, "Is that like the phone in Mima's kitchen that's on that curly wire?" And I was like, "Yeah, yep, sure is." But Robert starts going door to door to try to find anyone home to call 911. And eventually he found somebody up the street to call an ambulance and police. Police had one hell of a messy crime scene to shuffle through. They canvass the neighborhood and they hear about the teen girls seen driving around in what was possibly Ruth's missing blue Plymouth. And remember when Paula asked Karen to retrieve her coat from Ruth's house?
She never did.
Karen did not do it. Ruth's house was one of the absolute last places she wanted to be. Not only had Paula left her jacket, but in the pocket of her jacket
Her ID?
was her freshly filled birth control pills.
Oh, moron.
So the police, hearing the teen girls were seen driving in Ruth's stolen vehicle, paired with the female jacket and the prescription in the pocket, police had a person of interest. The same girl who was reported missing that very day, 15-year-old Paula Cooper. Karen, she had a guilty conscience, and she'd opted out of the joyride, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So, with the murder weighing heavily on her soul, she needed to talk to somebody. So Karen spotted a gym teacher who'd always been kind to her. She approached the gym teacher and said she had witnessed a murder and really needed to talk. Karen confessed her version of events, obviously.
I'm sure void of any participation on her end.
Right, exactly. So the gym teacher contacts police. The police sit down and talk with the gym teacher and Karen at the school, and police took Karen and Denise into custody. But April and Paula were nowhere to be found. They were off aimlessly driving around in Ruth's car with April's brother. They drove around Indiana and parts of Chicago. Finally, when the car was completely out of gas, they abandoned the vehicle and they call April's sister. She picks the kids up and brought them to the Gary police station. When Gloria and Herman, Paula's parents, meet at the police station to come deal with their daughter being arrested for murder, Herman said they wanted to talk to a lawyer before Paula would make a statement. Now, Gloria and Herman are never on the same page with anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why should this be any different? Meanwhile, Paula's sister, Rhonda, arrived at the police station shortly after Herman and Gloria, and she demanded to see Paula. But the police told her Gloria would have to be there because she's a parent. Whatever, I just want to see my sister. So the trio go into the interrogation room. You can't understand what's said, but they are whispering something. So when the detectives enter the interrogation room, it's silent. And then Gloria nudged Paula and told her, say something, which is literally in contrast with what Herman told her to do. But Paula asked that the detectives not make eye contact with her. So everyone in the room turned 45 degrees to face the wall as Paula gave her version of events. Now keep in mind, Karen has already confessed. April's in another interrogation room also confessing. Denise has confessed. The girls just started pointing fingers at each other.
I'm surprised at each other because it sounded like one person was the one that got stabby.
Right, but then you've got Karen who decided to play in Ruth's wounds while she's laying there dying. Paula and her two friends, they were held in the juvenile facility waiting for their trials. Just 2 weeks after the murder of Ruth, Paula was sitting next to her friends during quiet hour, and the girls started getting too loud. The guard told them, shut up and spread out. Paula said no. The guard told Paula to take her ass back to her cell then. Rather than go quietly, Paula struck the guard across the bridge of her nose. A battle ensued until other guards arrived to pull Paula off the guard. As Paula's feral ass was being dragged away, she threatened the guard she attacked. She said, they better transfer the guard or Paula would get a knife and cut her. Paula kept having these types of fits in the juvenile facility, and these outbursts led to the decision to transfer the girls to the adult facility. Paula and Karen would share a cell in the Lake County Jail for 2 months. If you keep track, they got arrested in late May. By July 1985, the cases against all 4 girls had been moved to adult court, and the prosecutor announced that he would be seeking the death penalty for all 4 girls.
Good.
They were the youngest females in the country to be facing the death penalty.
Night-night.
Karen and Paula claimed they were suicidal. So in response to their claims,
here's the needle.
They were put on suicide watch.
Why? Save the state some money.
The guards took the girls' personal belongings and their underwear.
Was that the only personal belonging?
I have no idea, but they can't hang themselves with their bra or undies, I guess. I feel a draft. So in response to having everything taken, They banged on the bars of their cells and screamed and shouted. So the guards responded with the assistance of a nurse and gave the girls a sedative to shut them up. Karen took her oral sedative like a good girl. Paula told them to go fuck themselves.
So they gave it to her in suppository form.
Well, they gave it to her in needle form, and during this encounter, Paula attacked another guard.
Yeah, well, they should have used the dart gun. Just been like,
right? A month later, in August of 1985, the jail had quite a bit on their hands with Paula.
mm-hmm.
She's now 16, and she's started receiving visitors in the jail. 2 of them were male correctional officers.
Oh, goodness. Some people just like to bring their work home with them.
And they couldn't bring it home, so they decided to go visit it.
Dude, me and Dave were watching a crime show yesterday, and like this lady who was a reverend or a priest or whichever female version of it is, and she ended up marrying one of the inmates. And I was like, she really went the long haul on that one.
We did the one case, the founder of the internet feller. There was a woman that was that worked at the jail. She divorced her doctor husband to marry the criminal feller. I was just like, I don't understand. I guess because they're criminals, they are smooth talkers, but damn, that's a con artist. So 2 of the male correctional officers are visiting Paula. Another visitor for 16-year-old Paula is a male therapist. But they weren't visiting Paula because of their careers. They were having sex with her.
Naturally. They missed their opportunity when she was on the street and she had good prices.
Paula was a lot to handle. As the trials for the girls began, up first was Denis Thomas. She's now 15, and her trial is set to begin November of 1985. Just before her trial, Denis lucked out, and the prosecutor took the death penalty off the table because he said Denis was more of a bystander than a participant. The coroner reported some of the cuts on Ruth looked like saw marks, and also testified that Paula or Karen stabbed Ruth with such force that the knife went through Ruth's body and pierced the carpet under her body, but the knife went beyond the carpet and chipped the wooden floor beneath that.
Well, it was a 12-inch blade. I don't know about you, but any of the 70-year-old people I've seen are on the thin side.
And she was no different. I mean, she looked like your typical granny with the short, white, curly hair, the glasses. She had the 70 glasses that look like the cat eye shape.
It's because it's probably when she bought them.
She looked like a sweet little old lady. The jury absolutely hated Denise and the rest of the girls, but it was Denise's trial.
I was going to say, Denise is the least naughty.
Yeah, but hearing all of this, Denise was found guilty very quickly.
Well, I guess she learned the lesson of guilty by association.
She sure did, the very hard way. Denise had to come back in a few months to get her hear what her sentencing was going to be. And the other attorneys for the other 3 girls attended Denise's trial to take notes, watch the jury, watch the judge, just kind of get a feel.
I wouldn't want to be the one that let your attorney learn lessons on.
I feel like of the 4 girls, Denise is the one to learn from because she did the least. And they hated her, and she was still found guilty of participating in the murder. So in March 1986, Karen Corder, she's now 17, she decided to plead guilty in hopes that because she's taking the guilt when they did her sentencing,
leniency,
that she would avoid the death penalty. April pleads guilty as well. And then Paula took the advice of her attorney. He told Paula their judge opposed the death penalty.
Except for situations like this.
However, by pleading guilty, it didn't remove the death penalty as an option. It was always going to be a risk, whether she took it to trial or pled guilty. But on April 21st, 1986, Paula Cooper appeared in court to take that very risk. Herman, her father, and Rhonda, her sister, appeared in court in support of Paula as she pled guilty to the murder of Ruth. Gloria, however, had packed her shit and moved to Georgia. She washed her hands of her family.
Well, she wanted to do that since their birth, so this was just a catalyst.
Well, I think also as details as to what their life was like, she wasn't painted to look like a great lady because she wasn't.
She's not. It didn't take much brushwork.
Right. So rather than own her own shit, she's going to tuck tail and run.
And change her name to... Nothing. All right.
No, she didn't change her name. A few months would go by, and the girls would appear in court for their sentencings. Karen Corder was given a 60-year prison sentence. Denis Thomas, she took her chances with the jury, and they hated her, but she lucked out, I guess, and received a 35-year sentence.
Yeah, sure is lucky.
April Beverly, she was the mastermind behind the robbery, and she waited outside during the actual murder. She pled guilty for her role and received 25 years.
That show that we were watching, the one gal's boyfriend murdered his grandmother, and she was at the aunt's house. The aunt wasn't home, but she got 30 years. He got 35 years because she did not call anyone and she did not try to help.
Makes sense. Paula was the only one left. Her case reached new depths of chaos. The prosecution received a visitor on Paula's behalf, a monk from the Vatican. They verified the monk's credentials, and the monk handed the prosecutor a letter from Pope John Paul II stating they were not happy that the prosecutor was seeking the death penalty for such a troubled young soul.
Cry about it later. Punch her ticket. You know what? Send her to Texas. They'll finish her off.
Well, she still needs to be sentenced. It's just that nobody appreciates from the Vatican that they're even trying.
Yeah, but how many people appreciate we have a dead lady?
Right? And as if that wasn't enough.
You know what? I changed my sentence for her. Her and her mother die. And her father. It's a threefer.
Anyway, as if that wasn't enough, Paula's attorney goes to the prosecutors in June of 1986 and is like, yeah, so you can't sentence Paula to death.
Watch us.
And the prosecutor's like, oh yeah? Why?
But you're not going to want to miss this, because death to you.
Her attorney goes, because she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And a massive sex scandal erupted from the Lake County Jail that very month. Vernon Rooster was 25. Parlame Range was 27. They were the two guards that were having sex with Paula. And Michael Dean Lampley was a recreational therapist from a mental health center, and he too was having sex with Paula.
He was just going real above and beyond.
One of the guards admitted to having sex with Paula when she was a week.
As the paternity test confirmed the fatherhood, good thing he admitted it. We wouldn't have found that out.
No, listen. He admitted to having sex with Paula when she was a week shy of her 16th birthday. 1 week shy of the age of consent in Indiana.
They're all disgusting. I don't care if she was a week after her 16th birthday. How old are they? Their 30s?
25, 27, and 40s.
Oh, all right.
The teeny tiny catch in all this?
It's going to take her sitting on death row for a while anyway. It's not like they sentence her and then bring her back to the gallows.
Right.
So we're fine to wait.
So the teeny tiny catch in all this was, it was not...
They're all married.
It was not illegal for guards and prisoners to have sexual relationships in Indiana in 1986.
Of course not. Because it's Indiana.
It was simply frowned upon.
That's their Love is Blind. Those are their pods.
It's
they
Love
also
is...
call them their cells.
No, it's called Love is Caged.
That's good.
You know what?
It's going to be a new show. Fuck
yeah, I was just about to say they should.
We don't need that out there.
We sure don't. After everything came to light, the guards resigned and the therapist was fired.
You know what? Actually, I think they have a show that Love Behind Bars.
Okay, well,
I think that's a thing.
We watch different shows.
I have not watched it.
Uh-huh. Dave, don't let her watch that.
I think he was the one watching it.
Ugh, Dave, I'm ashamed of you.
It is a thing. Can prison-bound passion ever work? From a mugger who's married his victim to a couple who conceived 2 children during conjugal visits. Convict cupids tell their stories.
That's disgusting.
Somebody married their mugger? What is wrong with these people?
A lot.
It's on Amazon Prime.
I'm good. You can just update me as you watch it.
I'm not supporting that. Season 15? Holy shit!
How many episodes are in each season?
I'm not looking at it! Oh, wait. Oh, that's Locked Up Abroad. Love Behind Bars. I don't know if that's a different thing altogether, but...
We live in a real sick world, you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, none of those men, even though they all were fired or quit, none of them were prosecuted. I think at bare minimum, the feller that at least admitted to having sex with her before she turned 16, he can't lie about her that he didn't know her age. He's literally got her age right there. But the supervisors that were on the floor at the jail during all of this boinking, They were suspended for 15 days. But all of that chaos, it was just a publicity stunt. Paula wasn't pregnant.
No. Nobody even checked?
Eventually. But it didn't matter because, like you pointed out, even if Paula received a death sentence, her pregnancy would have long come and gone before execution date.
I done said that already.
Right. Which is what the prosecutor was like when they were like, yeah, so she's going to sit in there and rot for a while.
Well, I guess they were assuming she'd just keep cranking them out.
Well,
They'd have to catch her between pregnancies.
Well, shortly after Paula's sex scandal stunt, there was a change in the laws, and now guards and inmates can no longer have sex.
You know what? I wonder on average, and I can't help that my brain went this way, of how many dicks a male prisoner takes at all, whether to the face or the rectum, versus how many she was taking wherever.
I don't know.
Like, was she below average, considering she wasn't in a male prison?
I don't know.
Just curious.
Your brain works in disgusting ways.
Yeah, I don't even know why.
Because you've been sick for a real long time.
They would be the same sex officers.
So I kind of get it, because some of them ladies can be real strong, and I get having to need muscle, but they should be kept separate.
Right. I've seen some of those strong ladies can also be on the other side.
Right.
We'll call the taser the equalizer. And like I said, with that blow dart tranquilizer, they need to start using that. Like, all right, Janice, got you in her sights. And guess what? We got rubber bullets for the rest of you.
So anyway, the laws were changed. Finally, 16-year-old Paula Cooper's judgment day would arrive, July 11th, 1986. By the time her sentencing came, Herman, her father...
Did her sister ever visit her? Or was she entertaining too many of the men folk?
I'm sure her sister visited her.
You're sure you don't know?
Probably did. If the guards and everybody else were visiting, I'm sure she was.
That's why I said maybe she had a busy itinerary and she couldn't pencil her in.
No. Rhonda was
like, there's only so long for the visiting hours, and she's renting out her vagina pretty regular, so...
Rhonda was a big supporter of her sister.
During trial?
Yeah, through everything, because she felt like Paula was not given a fair shake at life.
What about Uncle Ron?
So, Herman packed his shit and moved away to Tennessee, washed his hands of his daughter, because as
Gloria,
he went through the trial and the abuse that she endured at the hands of her father came to light, people didn't like him too much neither. So Herman and Gloria, gone, disappeared. Rhonda and her father Ronald were there for Paula. They loved her, and their hearts ached for the broken little girl who finally snapped. Paula spoke to Ruth's family saying, I hope y'all can find some happiness in your hearts to forgive me.
Happiness?
Yeah.
Happiness?
Uh-huh. And I know your mother was a Christian lady, and she's in heaven right now. I read my Bible. How do you think I feel?
What?
I can't sit here and tell you.
Nobody gives a shit how you feel.
I can't sit here and tell you I understand how you feel, because I don't. And she also acknowledged that her sorry would never be good enough. She rambled on for a while longer, but whatever, you get the gist of it. All about her, she is sorry, but she's still kind of a little punk. So the judge weighed in heavily. His heart sank for the 16-year-old, and he told her that the law requires him, and I do so impose the death penalty. The courtroom erupted. Paula sobbed as she was escorted from the chaotic courtroom, and just like that, Paula Cooper, at 16 years, 10 months, and 16 days, became the youngest prisoner ever sentenced to death in Indiana, and she was now the youngest female on death row anywhere in the United States. The judge, because he was very opposed to the death penalty, he was very distraught. He fled the courtroom, went to his chambers, and on his way, he spotted an attorney who handles appeals quite regularly. He grabbed that attorney and pled with the attorney to get the death penalty he just sentenced Paula to overturned. The judge felt sick, having felt forced to sentence Paula to death because the defense did not provide an adequate case to allow for any other sentencing guidelines to be utilized. On April 30th, 1987, less than a year after the sentencing, the judge drove his car into the back of a semi and was killed.
Yikes.
He'd been drinking and driving. Meanwhile, Paula, sitting in her prison cell, received letters from all over the world. Some wanted romantic relationships with Paula, including another death row inmate in North Carolina.
These prisons are not very
secure.
Yeah. Turns out she needs her lunch to go pick up her birth control too.
Well, she's only 17, and another more.
What's the matter?
That
they don't just lock up the old.
No, I'm just
inmates, giving you. But she's 17.
No, I'm saying like she's now 17. This is what's going on in her short little life that she's been on this earth.
She's been having sex this whole time.
I understand. I'm not talking about her sex life. I'm saying
you just were.
I'm saying that by 17 years old,
she's still doing the same thing she was doing a year ago.
She has a lot of chaos in her little tiny life.
Sounds like a lot of dicks. Where's the chaos?
Anyway, another more surprising letter was from Ruth's 39-year-old grandson, Bill. Paula and Bill began writing letters to each other. He believed in his heart.
He doesn't start having sex with her, does he?
No. He's more of like a father figure to her because he is about 20 years older than her.
What happened to Uncle Ron?
He's still there.
Not much of a Paul, I guess.
He believed in his heart that his Nana Ruth would not want to see Paula executed.
I don't know.
Let me just put this out there to you right now. If somebody brutally murders me,
if I'm sliced and diced, let them die.
Yeah, put it on record that if I am ever brutally murdered, I don't care how old they are. I don't care what their life was like.
What? Shish kebab them back. That's what I say.
Yeah, eye for an eye. Ruth was a Bible believer, and
is that even a?
I don't know.
I think you just made that up, but we'll go with it. A Bible believer.
And I am more on the side of an eye for an eye, hardcore. But anyway, Paula's case would reach all across the world. Reporters were contacting the prosecutor, and I think the judge was probably receiving a lot of hate, which led to
the drinking.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't sure if the baby was his.
You're sick? There's no baby.
Yet.
All the reporters were asking for follow-up requests on what was going on with Paula's sentencing. Reporters from England, the Netherlands, Italy was a heavy supporter of Paula.
Surprising, Italy.
Yeah. Scandinavia, North Africa, West Germany.
West Africa?
No, North Africa, West Germany. Oh. I know we're all over the place here. And even as far away as Australia.
Man, her legs did spread wide. Was she the first OnlyFans?
Outside the U.S. Embassy in Italy, crowds protested the sentencing for Paula's execution. In Italy, they signed a petition with more than 2 million signatures.
Did they know what they were signing?
Calling for resentencing for Paula.
Whatever.
More than 14,000 letters from Australia alone flooded the prosecutor's desk.
They should send them all postcards with Ruth's dead body on them. No words, just send them a picture because it's worth 1,000 of those.
By the way, all this signatures, letters, all that was all by 1987. So within 1 year of her sentencing.
Give them time, they'll forget.
Through it all, Paula remained on death row. She spent 23 hours a day in her cell. Meals were brought to her. And she had 30 minutes for recreation and 30 minutes to bathe.
Is that when the guards came in?
Well, I realize that I have a very chaotic life. But man, if I could spend 23 hours a day in a cell, have my meals brought to me.
We call that the kitchen.
I call that a vacation. 30 minutes to go exercise. A 30-minute shower? Hell yeah.
Did you mention you're going to be surrounded by a clam bar?
They keep them separated because they're death row inmates.
Does it seem like it's a spa-like experience in the shower to you?
I have to stop laughing. All right. Finally, on March 1st, 1989, the Indiana Supreme Court would hear arguments in Paula's case. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you that the courtroom was packed. Whatever decision these judges would make, it was clear Paula's case would be historic. Indiana had executed only 3 people for juvenile crimes, none in almost 70 years. None had been younger than 17 at the time of their crime. If her sentence stood, Paula Cooper would be the first person to die in Indiana for a crime committed at 15. And finally, after waiting months after that trial, on July 13th, 1989, Ruth's family and the entire world standing behind Paula, she received the news. Her death sentence had been overturned.
Boo.
The Supreme Court had not freed her. It had merely converted her death sentence to a 60-year sentence.
Still boo.
But she would be able to breathe fresh air and have more freedom within those prison walls.
No, somebody needs to fart into her vent. I really like that one. Breathes fresh air in my eye. My brown eye.
Well, she's now able to go outside.
I don't care. She should die from a vitamin D deficiency.
In Indiana's system...
Oh, I just thought of one.
Oh my gosh.
She's been getting plenty of the D.
Yeah, she has. Well, not really, because they turned around and changed them laws. She can't get no more D.
That doesn't mean she wasn't sneaking it.
That's true.
During her bathroom breaks.
Ew. That's where she's getting her clam chowder from, according to you.
That's not the D.
Anyway, in Indiana's system, she'd likely get out in half the time, minus what she'd already served. And that meant that she would spend probably an additional 27 years more in prison. It was a long time, but it wasn't the electric chair. And for once in her life, it felt good to be Paula Cooper. In 1988, the U.S. Supreme Court changed the current execution guidelines from 10 to 16. Which, when I saw 10, I was like, they allowed for a 10-year-old to be executed?
There's some real naughty ones in Indiana.
I feel like a 10-year-old still learned how to wipe their ass correctly.
Not all 10-year-olds.
And then in 2002, Indiana was like, nope, we still feel icky sentencing 16-year-olds to death. Let's bump it up to 18. Then the rest of the country got on board with Indiana, and in 2005, the legal age to be sentenced to death would be 18. Now, an update on these ladies. April Beverly was released from prison in 1999, and she was last known to be living in Colorado. And when reporters called to ask her questions about this case, she will hang up on them. Denis Thomas, I don't have much of an update on her, but she was released in 2003. Karen Corrider, she spent 22 years of her 60-year sentence behind bars before her poor health took her life. She died from heart disease and complications with her asthma while still in prison. As for Paula Cooper, she got in trouble 23 times while in prison. It took 23 times before Paula woke up and realized that she needed to do better. That was when she became friends with Ruth's grandson, Bill. She got her GED. She managed to also get her bachelor's degree in 2001, and Paula was a changed person. On June 17th, 2013, 43-year-old Paula Cooper got dressed that morning in clothes that were donated to the jail. She was handed $75, and as the gates opened, Paula walked ahead to her new life of freedom. Paula Cooper was on parole, but she was free. Life was not easy for Paula. She spent more years living caged than free. Her name was forever attached to the horrible decision she made as a young teen. And 2 years after her release, on May 26, 2015, Paula Cooper sat alone in her car with the darkness surrounding her. She sobbed for forgiveness into a digital recorder. She sobbed apologies and confessions of love and admiration to each of her friends and family. And as the sun began to shine over the horizon, Paula ended the recording saying, "Forgive me, I must go now." As she exited the car, Paula picked up the gun off the back seat. Feeling the breeze in her hair and the cold metal of the gun in her hand, she leaned against that tree in the garden spot in the woods where her father used to grow his vegetables and beat her and Rhonda. Paula closed her eyes, pressed the muzzle of the gun to her temple, and squeezed the trigger. Paula Cooper died at 5:15 in the morning on May 26, 2015 at 45 years old.
She takes after her mother.
Except she's more efficient.
No, she knows how to do it right the first time.
Pretty much. But I thought that was a sad case.
It was a sad case. Her parents should have caught charges because
they were pieces of shit.
They were pieces of shit.
I'm glad Rhonda was able to escape.
Yeah.
It was just sad.
It's got to be a lot of guilt on Rhonda because she left her behind.
Yeah.
And considering she was the good girl.
Yeah. That was why I wanted to tell you so much of the backstory was she didn't just break. I think being forced to have that abortion, that was when she really just kind of gave up. Anybody that knew her, like her teachers and people at school and things like that, they said she changed. Even the officers, because she's a frequent runaway. Everyone could see her personality just completely changed after that summer. And the only thing that happened different is she was forced to have that abortion, and it broke her. So made me feel really bad for her. Granted, I don't think she needed to bring a child into this world, because she definitely did not have a stable home life, and that would have been another child brought into an abusive household. But I just thought it was really sad, and I felt sorry for that little girl.
Yeah. But I still say the parents should have been charged.
Oh yeah.
Because she was a minor when all that shit happened, so it should have brought to light all the other things. And it's not like they didn't have neighbors or Ron, or really Rhonda, because she'd be an adult by then to be able to say the kind of things that were endured.
But that's all I got.
It was a fucked up case for sure. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.